Hi, Rabbi.
Hey, welcome back.
Thank you. I haven't been able to make it because I have my Gators for Israel meeting usually on Mondays, but they canceled it for today, so I thought I would stop by.
It's wonderful to have you. Very, very wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's get everybody coming in here. Okay. Ellie's here also. Okay. Shabbos is for the boys, Ellie. I don't even know what that means. Shabbos is like one of the mitzvahs men and women are equally obligated in. That poster makes no sense. That poster literally makes no sense. Okay. Okay, let's get, I think we're ready to get started. I don't see any reason why we should wait any longer. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm sure this is the everybody has been waiting for so very long. It's the ultimate debate. Tomorrow, if you have not heard, is election day. Well, it's been election day. I don't even know what you want to call it anymore. You can, because like the polls have been open for like 6 weeks already. But tomorrow is, I guess we call it end of election day, right? You have to have voted by tomorrow. If you don't vote by tomorrow, you can no longer vote. You can get your ballot in and postmarked by tomorrow, and it might not get to the ballot for a couple of days, and that'll still count. But tomorrow is end of election day, and we have two for the presidency. One is what's his name? President Trump is one of them. President Trump is one of the candidates. He's been president, if you haven't noticed, for the last 3.5 years. The other one is Vice President Biden. He's called Vice President because for 8 years he had a job as Vice President of the United States of America. Before that, he was Senator Biden, where he was a senator for 41 years. He was a senator. And the good news is, I would like to say this, that contrary to probably everything you've read on the internet, they are both qualified to be president, because to be president of the United States, you only need 2 qualifications. One of them, President Trump taught us more than anybody else, is that you must be born in the United States. President Trump spent 4 years of his life drilling that into us before becoming president. That's very important to be born in the United States. He wanted to make sure everybody knew that, so that, I don't know why he did that, but he did. And the other one is that you must be 35 years old. Both of these men are way past the 35-year-old mark, and both have been proven to have been born in America. So they are qualified for president. That's all you need to be president of the United States, those 2 things. So once you hit the mark, you're qualified. I do want to say one thing, which I think is very important. When it comes to an election for anything, dog catcher, president of the United States, I think it's very important, and I hope that none of you fall into this trap in your life. But it's very important that we approach everything honestly, every issue honestly, with an open mind. And that means that even if you have a preferred candidate and you're dead set on your candidate, that you honestly approach the other candidate and don't use ridiculous statements to pin them into a corner, and you examine all of their opinions and are ready to admit when your opponent does something good or has done something good in the past, and are ready to admit when your favorite candidate does something wrong or has a bad position. All too often, what we're finding is this sort of tribalism when it comes to candidates and elected office, where people are dead set on their candidate and begin to demonize the other candidate. That's not the way elections are supposed to happen. Okay? If we had a full out person that was for sure a horrible individual, then maybe you could make an argument for acting that way. Okay. We have yet to have a candidate like that for president of the United States. And that's for sure not true here. Both of these people have done a tremendous amount of good in their life, and both of these people have done bad things in their life. And it's important that we're ready to admit that. And it's very important that we don't spend our time demonizing the other candidate. Let everybody else make that noise. Let us be the people that elevate the conversation. Let us be the people that examine the candidates for their true positions. Let us examine what they're saying and what they've done and judge them based on that, not based on rumor and innuendo and ridiculous things that people say. I hope that's clear, because if anything, that should be the Jewish people's role. We should never be contributing to the noise. We should be contributing to elevating the conversation. And I hope that that's what you get out of these meetings, you get out of the different writings that you're seeing. And if you do run into people that are absolutists, that say that my candidate is the only candidate and the world will fall apart if the other person is elected, then stop listening and reading that person, because that's not a good influence on you. Read people that are thoughtful. Listen to people that are thoughtful. Don't follow people that are absolutists, that are 100% confident that their opinion is the only correct opinion. One of the things that this group did, which I think was a tremendous Kiddush Hashem, and we planned it together and we executed it together, and it's been shared thousands of times, is we produced a document that was a balanced examination of 16 issues. And that went out all over the world. And I have to tell you, what's amazing about it is that it received zero criticism. It's not true one person didn't like it. Now, if you to understand that a document gets no criticism means that it wasn't read. That's one option, except that this document was shared thousands of times, which means that, right, it didn't have like a glaring headline that made it seem cool. It just said, just the facts, FAQ, Trump, Biden on Israel. That's not something that you're like, oh, I have to go ahead and share that all over the place. That means that people read it and they paid attention to it and they examined it. That's something that we could hold our heads high and say, what did we contribute to this election cycle? We gave to the world an ability to look at things evenly and then make a decision based on the facts, not based on rumor or innuendo. So congratulations, everybody that contributed to that document. And even if you didn't contribute, you just supported your friends contributing to that document. You did a great job. That's something that teenagers did. That wasn't written by adults, it was written by you. And I have to say, it was probably the only document out there like that. There have been tons of posts about why you should vote for President Trump on Israel and why you should vote for Vice President Biden on Israel, or why you shouldn't vote for the other one, right? But nobody, I didn't see it, took an even look at both candidates on the issues and just said, this is what they said. That's it. This is just what they said, not this is what you have to do. And with that, I'm looking forward to this, because this will be one of the only meetings where I don't have to do anything. I can just sit back. I'll be moderating, but the work is going to be on you guys. So I think we have Rafi versus Shlomi here in the debate. Does anybody else want to participate in the debate? I don't want to cancel anybody out and say, but those are the two people I know that volunteered. So if anybody else is planning on talking, please let me know. And it doesn't have to be one-on-one debate. Shlomi and Rafi are not pretending to be President Trump and Vice President Biden. They're pretending to speak on behalf of their issues. Shlomi will be representing Vice President Biden, and Rafi will be representing President Trump's positions. What's great about this is that both of them, obviously, for those that know them, are actually fans of the other candidate. Okay. And yes, Jordan, you can throw things in spontaneously. Just raise your hand, and we'll include you in here. But both of them, and I think that's also an important lesson, is that you're not going to really understand something, your own positions, until you understand your opponent's positions. And that's a key debating trick, is taking on the other person's opinion. Okay, so I'm assuming that Rafi and Shlomi learned a lot this week in preparing. Okay, so here we go. Let's get started. I'm going to ask questions, and then we will let you answer. President Trump is the sitting president of the United States, so we will allow him to answer first. President Trump, position, Rafi, could you tell us how you envision handling probably the greatest national security threat facing the United States and Israel in Iran? How do you see the way forward on Iran?
Look, President Trump has been very clear on this issue. He will not allow Iran to pursue nuclear weapons or intercontinental ballistic missiles. He will not allow them to continue to be the world's greatest sponsor of terror. He has proved this through countless acts, exiting the disastrous nuclear Iran deal, which paved the path for them to have nuclear weapons within a decade. He ratcheted down sanctions on them, which has crippled their economy and has not allowed them to pursue these nuclear weapons, which would pose a great national security risk, not only for Israel and the region, but for the United States. What has Joe Biden done on this issue? Joe Biden was the one who entered into this deal in the Obama administration. You didn't oppose it. You didn't come out against it. You sat there idly by, and you were there when he signed this deal, which put Israel in harm's way and really put the United States in harm's way, as well as giving Iran $150 billion, $1.5 billion of it flown in on American C-130s.
Okay. Vice President Biden's positions.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The people on the person, representing Vice President Biden's position would like to commend my fellow opponent for his wise words. However, his words were wise, not accurate. His words rung hollow. He started to claim that the Iran nuclear deal was disastrous. What is more disastrous, inaction or a false or a misguided action? What's worse, letting someone stay and build up their military and have no stopping power to their nuclear centrifuges and their buildup of missiles, or trying to make a plan that will bring them into the fold, into the Brotherhood of Nations, and try to give them a good reason, a humanitarian reason, to put away their current path of destruction. Mr. Moderator, would it not hold true that Vice President Biden, under and working with the Obama administration, worked to create a safer Israel in the form of the $3.3 and $500 million deals that allowed Israel to protect herself and make a greater safety net? Mr. Moderator, has any of that money been increased under the Trump administration? Mr. Moderator, have we seen any true fighting of Iran? No, we've seen ignorance. We've seen lies, and we've seen ineptitude. We need to return back to a strong position, and we need to put Iran back onto the burner, back into the hot seat, and make them answerable to the international brotherhood. Mr. Moderator, if we let Iran go as we have been letting them go, we'll see disaster. There's only one strong person.
Okay. Okay, that was a good first round that we got going there. Rafi, would you like to answer Shlomi's?
I'd just like to point out, sorry to cut you off, but I'd just like to point out, Shlomi, that under the Trump administration, Israel gets $400 million more a year than it did under the Biden administration. You're right. In a utopian world, your deal would be good. Bring Iran to the table, make them conform. That's the same thing we said about China. Completely failed. So what essentially we did with Iran, we basically gave them the reins. We gave them the $150 billion. We released all the sanctions. We brought them in, but we didn't ask anything of them. We didn't ask them to stop their intercontinental ballistic missile program. We didn't ask them to stop paying Hezbollah $7 billion a year and paying Hamas and the PIJ and the terrorist organizations in Yemen all throughout the Middle East. What did? You just gave them the money.
Shlomi?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to repeat myself. Again, I'd like to ask a question. Mr. Moderator, what is better? A misguided action that can be repaired, or a complete, total inaction. The JCPOA had its flaws, 100%. I will be the first to say it. But deals can be edited. Deals can be reworked. We can fix these problems. With hindsight, we have 2020 vision, and we will fix these problems in a Biden administration. What did the Trump administration answer the JCPOA? No, an all-out leaving. Leaving that of the deal that not only left Iran in complete control of their own missile programs, of their own nuclear program, of which the Trump administration claims to care about, but it allowed and left the burden of the entire Iran nuclear deal on our European allies. Our European allies have been now fronting a bill that America designed and brought them into. Our European allies are now the only thing standing in between Iran and Israel. We abandoned Israel on the stage of Europe. On the stage of Iran. We let Europe be take over as Israel's true protector, Israel's true ally. This cannot stand. That is an action. That is cowardice, and that is sad. Thank you.
All right. Well, let me ask you this question to both of you, and I'll we let President Trump's representative speak last time, so now we'll ask Vice President Biden's to take the first. How do you see being able to get Iran to come back to the table? It's been a couple of years since we've had any negotiations with them. What would attract them to actually come and redo the deal now?
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to remind you that the Iranian people are rational people, not irrational. Any deal would entice them, as it would be true of any people. The Iranian regime has openly stated that they will be willing to go back to the JCPOA current standing before we left, and that will be our current basis for negotiations. That is a fine place to start, because from there we could take control of the conversation and truly move forward in a positive light. I don't see it happening under a Trump administration, though.
Okay. Rafi?
Yeah, but you called I just want to clarify, did you call the people in Iran rational, or did you call the leaders who have led to the death of thousands of Americans and many Israelis and have paid terrorist organizations? Are you calling them rational?
I'm calling the Iranian regime people. They are not aliens. Everyone has a rationale, no matter how.
They're thugs. They kill Americans, and they're going to continue to do it unless. But they haven't been doing it as much as they did in the Obama-Biden administration as they're doing in the Trump administration, because they can't afford to. The mullahs in Iran just don't have the capital to do it anymore because of the sanctions that President Trump has put on Iran, not the ones that Obama released.
Is that really so? Is that the argument you want to take? Is that the path you want to argue right now? Please, I'm willing to. Give me a confirmation, yes or no, if this is where you want to go. Please tell me.
All right, let's go.
Okay, glad to know my opponent here is aware of consequences. Mr. Moderator, I'd like to remind the representative of the Trump policy that is it not true that every day Israel shoots down or has to fire against? Oh, I look great today. That is it not true that Israel has to fire against Iranian missile shipments, Iranian weapon shipments? What happened to the cash? What if they had no cash? What's that actually happen? No. Sanctions are only affecting the people. That's obvious. The government does not care if you, as you put it so subtly, they're thugs. If the government doesn't care about their people, they won't care if they're sanctioned or not. This is a ridiculous argument. To even argue that more sanctions is the answer here, in the absence of any greater deal, is like saying a Band-Aid will stop a bullet wound.
I'm sorry, I missed the end of your statement there. What did you say?
Imagine putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. That's the same thing as putting sanctions without a deal. Sanctions don't do anything for the people. It doesn't do anything against the government. It doesn't do anything for Israel. If that's not what we're here to try to discuss, I don't know what we're here for.
Sanctions bring people to the table. They have historically worked. They worked to bring Iran to the table in the first place. And they're working again because Iran is coming to the realization that while, yes, they can continue to ship rockets and Israel is going to shoot them out of off of the face of the earth every single time, as they've done for years now. This isn't a new thing, but your approach is that we should give them free rein because we should expect of them to, come to this realization that, maybe, terrorism is a good thing. We got a lot of oil here. Maybe we should sell the oil. But what have they done since 1979? They've continuously attacked Americans, Israelis, and they have perpetuated the greatest amount of terror in the history of the world.
My friend, you said that inactivity and letting Iran have free reign is of Biden policy. That is an absolute joke. That's Trump policy. As I've been saying this entire time, that is literally what Trump has allowed to happen in Iran. Is it not true that we can put sanctions on any country as we want? If the country doesn't have the ultimate care of their people, sanctions will mean nothing to them. Iran gets their money through selling weapons and through their price controlling of oil. That's how Iran gets their money. Also pistachios. But that's how Iran gets their money. They don't care about the sanctions that you put on their people because the sanctions don't cover the government. Instead, we need something that will contact the government directly. A deal, perhaps a nuclear deal, that would prevent them and get them to the table to stop producing a nuclear weapon. I truly don't see any argument that you can make here that actually can help Israel here. That's what we're here for, to discuss how to help Israel better. Is that not what we want as Jews? I don't see any way you could go here to get to.
I think rockets not being flown from Tehran to Tel Aviv is helping Israel just a little bit. But the greater point is that, the sanctions aren't perfect, and you're right, there are loopholes. These are the most effective sanctions, and they can't sell weapons. They can't sell weapons to other countries. It is illegal, and Israel stops it, and the U.S. stops it. But the deal, your great deal, it gave them the money. It gave them this money. It gave them $1.5 billion flown on C-130s into Tehran. So what do you think they did with that money? Just take a guess. Was it pistachio farming? Was it building new infrastructure? Or was it creating the deadliest weapons in the history of humanity?
I'd like you to tell me, do we have any records of where that money went to? We don't. Do we have any idea of what that money could have gone to? Sure, we can speculate. Do we base theory of ideas of speculation on the prospects of a nuclearly armed state that's in your terms irrational? Is that what we do? No, we look at the facts, we look at what we have, and we try our best to come up with a solution that will do best by both parties. We cannot act in tandem. We cannot act, unilaterally for Israel or unilaterally for Iran. I agree. We need to act in idea of both. We cannot coerce Iran into a position because they cannot be coerced. They do not care about their people. There's no coercion possible there. Sanctions do not work. Sanctions are coercion. Sanctions are a bully's technique. They're taking the lunch money. We also can't just throw money at a problem. I agree. We can't just throw money at Israel and say, let them take care of it. I agree. We need a deal, perhaps a joint commission, maybe a plan of action to bring both parties together along with European and American backing that will allow them to move forward. Is that all we're going to be talking about here, repeating the same terms? Or maybe we can continue, Mr.
Yeah, let me step in here and thank you, Shlomi. Let me step in here and ask this question. Recently, the United States has tried to extend the arms embargo on Iran. The rest of the world did not join in with the Trump administration on extending that arms embargo, and the Trump administration has said that they're going to extend it anyway, and sort of force through banking administration and other means the rest of the world to follow through. Does that harbinger a sense of sort of America's going at it alone and the world is not with us? Or is that a smart strategy to take, standing up to the rest of the world when they don't stand up to Iran? I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'm going to go with Rafi first.
Sure. As you said, the president's allegiance isn't to the UK or to Ireland. It's to the people of the United States and what's going to keep them safe. And, you know, the US and our allies in Europe and on the Security Council, they voted against us in this. They voted to let Iran buy and sell weapons from China and from Russia, and that will not stand. And the US is in a unique position. They're the only country in the world that can do this to stop Iran from being able to purchase or to sell weapons. No other country in the world can do this. And you know, under the JCPOA deal, would this have made a difference, Shlomi?
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, I'd like to reaffirm that the current question is about the recent UN not extending the arms embargo and a possible US unilateral action on it.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Let me ask you a question, Rafi. How many parties were present at the JCPOA? How many parties signed on to it?
There were many European countries that signed on to the JCPOA deal. Hold on one sec.
Beautiful. That's all I needed to hear you say. How come then, under a possible Biden policy, under an Obama policy, combined with European backing, a plan that was designed by the Security Council, that was affirmed by the Security Council and by European states, with the Iran nuclear deal, with Iran, how come that deal had European support and not I'll wait until it comes back. You should hear this next part. Sorry about that. And not a unilateral arms embargo extended by the United Nations. Where the European support there? Where? Obvious. Your administration's brazen action and brazen ineptitude on Iranian policy has forced them away. They do not want to come back to us. They don't want to back us in this position because they realize we're wrong. In this moment, we could rectify that. We could take leadership position again. But right now, we're just a lone soldier going crazy. If we do not come back, maybe we could be in the wrong here. Maybe the Europeans are in the wrong here. Does not matter. Foreign policy does not base entirely off of morality, but based also upon strategy. If we do not move back towards our European base, we cannot make any substantial deals, and certainly not a deal that Iran will accept.
Okay, I'm going to step in here and switch the subjects now to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Trump administration has essentially, not on their own doing, but could be assigned blame to them, has essentially been cut off from discussions with the Palestinians, and the peace deal or any sort of end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has ended. Due to the fact that the Palestinians see the Trump administration as one-sided. How going forward do we bring the Palestinians back to the table and somehow create a solution and end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's been raging for over 100 years? I'll let Vice President Biden go ahead first.
Thank you. It would be an honor to be Biden himself, though I am not. I will support him, though. First, I would like to commend President Trump and his administration on their historic deal and their historic peace plans. That is beautiful stuff. Unfortunately, though, not all things are perfect. And in fact, most of the times they are not. In the historic plan, of which I'm referencing, just to be clear, it is supposed to be the U.S.-Israel-Palestinian plan. You might notice in that plan, 1/3 of the parties did not have direct contribution into the building of the plan. Whoever it is, whoever the blame and the onus is upon for why that is, maybe. I don't know. I wasn't there to write it. I'll even be clear, it could be one particular party. Does that matter? There's a plan that's supposed to solve one of the most complex problems in modern world history. Does a plan that had that solution supposed to ignore one of the parties or even give them not a set of impossible tasks? I have it on good authority from someone that was there at the witnessing and trying to help one of the first to hear about this plan and its specifics, have it on good authority that he says that these plans were intentionally made impossible. It is almost impossible for Palestinians to rid themselves of Hamas without any outside support. Yet that is what the plan calls for. The plan makes impossible demands of Palestinian people. Palestinian people, unfortunately, are now in a state of forfeit of their own personal civil liberties to the government that they unfortunately elected upon themselves. True, all that is true, and I know that's what you're going to say. But what is not acceptable is to still claim that this plan is good. A plan that has no third party, of which are supposed to have three parties, cannot be acceptable and should not even be debated because it is not allowed to even support one of the parties in particular.
Well, they can have as much say as they want on it if they would come to the table to negotiate. But since 1947, every time there's been a peace plan, not only have they said, no, we won't negotiate or we will negotiate, but it has led to violence. They've said no, and then there's been violence. They have to realize that their never-ending veto is coming to an end. It's over. The Peace and Prosperity Plan would have given them a state, Shlomi. It would have given them billions of dollars to that state. I think it was about $50 billion. Rabbi Pilachowski can correct me if I'm wrong there, but it would have been, and they could have negotiated for more. They could negotiate for different things, but what did they respond, Shlomi? They said no. And so what did the Arab countries? They said, you know what? It's enough. We've had enough of this. We're going to come. We're going to create deals. We're going to make a deal with Israel that's going to help both of our economies. That is going to be great for the region. And the Palestinians will realize that they're being left behind because they no longer have the power to say no, because the Arab nations are now turning to Israel and not to the Palestinians.
Before I can continue with my counter argument, I'd like to ask you a question to clarify. Are you saying that you want the Palestinian people to be left behind and then they have to catch up?
No, I'm saying that
so that's kind of what I gathered from your argument.
No, I'm saying that we've given them the opportunity. We've given them every means and motive to come to the table in the last 70 years, and they've said no. So it's time for us to show them a little bit of tough love, to show them that you can't always get what you want. You can't stop the world from spinning. And once they realize that, they're going to be the ones coming to us instead of the other way around.
I love the idea of tough love here. And excuse me, I had to roll up my arms. It's getting a bit hot because I'm getting a bit heated based off of the sheer absurdity and hatred you just spewed. What is tough love? Tough love is maybe taking away your child's favorite toy because they're misbehaving. Is tough love stealing land from people that is historically theirs, through no fault of the people that currently are in the land? Doesn't matter. That land was supposed to be there. That land was Palestinian. I'm not arguing against the validity of the Israeli state. Israel is totally legitimate and should be totally respected that way. However, just as legitimate, just as equal, and just as deserving of civil liberties and humanitarian support are the Palestinian people. You cannot argue and say, whatever, they'll catch up after the Arab parties in Israel have their plans. That does not work, and that is not kind, and that is cruel. It is cruel to do that to the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people, yes, you're right, it is $50 billion. $50 billion that they don't see a cent of until basically going through a civil war, into fighting through impossible circumstances and impossible desires, and unfortunately going through great trouble. $50 billion they will not see a cent of. Is that the plan that we want? Is that the example we want to show to the Palestinian people? That they're always playing second place, that they're always trying to catch up? No, we need to try to support them. And on the point of trying to support them, we can't take away their eventual prize in a state, their eventual land in a state, should a two-state solution ever come about. You have allowed, and even have your candidates allowed, and your candidate's name is even on settlements that would be in every international document, would be in the eventual Palestinian state. That is not fair to the Palestinian people. And actually, screw that. No such thing as fair. That is cruel to the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people have a right to safety, to liberty, and their historical lands. Is that not the whole reason of the Zionist movement? We needed safety. We needed a homeland. We needed our ancestral homeland. That is what we fought for. Why are we denying that of them? Why are you trying to take away everything from them just for a measly deal? We need something new. I lament that the Obama and Biden administration did not produce a deal of their own. Fine. I already commended you on that. It is not commendable to have a deal that completely forsakes one of the parties.
Okay, let me. This is gonna be our final segment of the night before we head out to the polls. Here's my our final question. I'll let President Trump. You and your administration have done an incredible thing with the first normalization and peace deals with the Arab world in 26 years. How do you see that continuing going forward?
Well, I think that first of all, to commend the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Sudan on these enormous steps towards peace and these normalizing ties. And I think that other countries are going to see there are going to be more than 100 direct flights from Tel Aviv to the UAE every single week. Can you imagine how many billions of dollars of commerce between the two countries there is going to be? How much security cooperation? The UAE is getting these F-35s. They've wanted them for a long time. They couldn't get them. Now they're going to get them. And other Arab nations are going to say, maybe just waiting for the Palestinian people to do it, to come to the table. Maybe we should come to the table. Maybe we should say, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, we want to make a deal. We want to have peace with Israel. We want to have direct flights. We want to have commerce between them. We want to have joint security cooperation between all of these nations, because that creates that makes it safer for each of these countries and the region as a whole.
Vice President Biden's side, how do you see your administration increasing normalization deals that frankly weren't done while you were vice president and were only done over the last couple of years?
Thank you. I'm glad you recognize it wasn't done under the Obama-Biden administration. And I, too, will recognize that. I will note that. Let me list off the countries that we're talking about here. Sudan, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. Sudan, home of the Khartoum Accords, where we were known for one of the most popular, famous piece of legislation that united all of Islamic nations for the modern history, the 3 no's. May I have some help from the group and try to acknowledge them? Sorry, what were they? Was it no negotiations? No peace? What was the last one? Can someone help me out here?
No recognition of Israel.
No recognition of Israel. Is this what we're looking for? Sudan? Wow. All right. Okay, Sudan can turn a leaf. Can flip over a new leaf. UAE, the country where notably it is still punishable by death to be homosexual. What's Israel known for being? The capital of homosexuality in the world. Wow. Again, we see a little bit of conflict here. What about Bahrain? I'm sorry, I did not research Bahrain. I was tight on time. But I'm sure we can see a bit of a trend here. Do these 3 nations represent the best of the Islamic world? Do these 3 nations represent the best of the foreign policy supporters for the Trump administration? No, I'm glad Obama-Biden administration did not sign these deals, because these deals would require a certain kind of leader to support them, not to throw Trump under the bus. I think these deals are a good thing, but it requires a certain kind of person, good or bad, to sign these deals. I think it's time instead to allow Biden to sign the deals with more liberal Muslim states, with Muslim states that care more about peace, care more about unified Islam, rather than anti-Iranian rhetoric. That's what we stand for in the Biden administration. We stand for group coming together for peace. The Iran nuclear deal is supposed to bring people for peace. Our eventual plans for a new Israel-Palestinian policy, if it should ever come, would likely reflect the same policy. If any new states under a Biden administration will come to sign with Israel, it will be under the guise of eventual peace in the region, not as anti-Iranian or anti-Palestinian. And that goes back to the main point. Israel cannot be solved, cannot say there's any peace in the region until Israel and the Palestinian people have come to a conclusion. We see a conclusion of their debate. That won't happen with the UAE Bahrain, and Sudan. Their support won't change a thing. I'll grant you Saudi Arabia. Let's say Saudi Arabia joins the group too. Is that going to help the Palestinian people? No. That only hurt the Iranian people. That's what I'm saying here. I'm saying peoples, not governments. Governments have flaws. I should know. I can see one. People don't. People require aid. People require and the United States to protect them, and the United States to help them. You have forsaken the peoples to making political deals with governments.
Okay, I think that's gonna be a wrap for us. This was I have to commend, first of all, this is a pretty absolutely amazing job by Shlomi Rashi here. This is like you guys did much better than I was really not that I would think that you guys wouldn't do a great job, but you guys really far exceeded what I think anybody would have expected. So very good job. I'm very impressed. You guys really knew the positions. You were entertaining, you were engaging, and like great job. And Geller and I were texting while this was going on and saying that we've got to do more of these. So I think that that's definitely on the menu, picking issues and debating them. So great job. Let's pray for peace over the next day or two. A little nerve-wracking what's going to be over the next. I'm confident that Americans will rise above and beyond the low expectations set forth by the media, and will hopefully be peaceful, and we'll see just the best for all the nations of the world and peace in the world. So until next week, we will probably have interesting things to say in the meantime. But have a great night, everybody.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for everyone for
Take care,
watching.
everybody.